Jin Yucheng's novel Flowers Text Chapter 4. 1. That day, Mairui and Mr. King were having tea and talked about the period when Po and Hu Sheng were messing round on the Shanghai-Nanjing highway. Po sneezed several times, and Hu Sheng next to him also sneezed. The official car drove very fast. Tao Tao handed over a tissue from the back seat and said, "It's a rare trip out. We have to socialize at night, so take care of yourself." Next to Tao Tao was Miss Yu, an investment client. At this moment, she took out a tissue, pressed it in front of her nose, and said, "The rain is getting heavier. Will it be lighter when we get to Suzhou?" Tao Tao said, "Don't worry. It will stop soon and everything has been arranged." Miss Yu said, "What is the content of this trip to Suzhou?" Tao Tao said, "Just socializing." Miss Yu said, "I don't believe it." Tao Tao said, "I have repeated it several times. My old friends in Suzhou are hospitable, and I just want to make friends with some Shanghai bosses." Miss Yu waved her hand, answered a few calls, and said with displeasure that trouble started as soon as she left Shanghai. Tao Tao said, "Not happy." Miss Yu said nothing. Tao Tao said, "Be happy." Miss Yu said softly, "Tao Tao and I can't understand." Tao Tao said that you should be optimistic in life. Miss Yu said nothing. The Shanghai student in the front row said, "Since we are out, forget it." Miss Yu said, "Well, yes, I do it for the sake of Mr. Hu and Mr. Bao." A Bao in the front row said, "Thank you." Tao Tao said, "I also have face. I have several foreign trade friends, and everyone knows Mr. Bao's name." Miss Yu said, "I hate Tao Tao the most. He is very purposeful in business. Whenever something happens, he will fight with me to the death, pestering him all the time. Mr. Crab's domineering temper will never change." Hu Sheng laughed and said, "A hairy crab can't escape with just one pinch." Miss Yu smiled and said, "Yes, Tao Tao's pliers are so powerful." After Miss Yu said this, she made a fuss in the back seat, and then slapped her. Miss Yu lowered her voice and said, "What are you doing if you touch me?" When the car arrived at the Hongpeng Hotel on Xianjiang Road in Suzhou, the rain stopped. The four of them got out of the car and entered the foreskin room. The boss greeted us and everyone took their seats. The boss said that I have long admired all of you, and it has been hard work on the road. Tao Tao has been my brother for many years. Please sit down first and I will toast you. So everyone ate and talked. The boss has a good drinker and is straightforward. His deputy, whose surname is Fan, is very enthusiastic. After the meal, the boss only mentioned an internal development plan. If you participate, no matter how much, the return rate will be high. Every time the boss talked about this, Tao Tao would follow up and say that so and so made a fortune because of it. Mr. Fan interrupted the conversation and said that it is not appropriate to cooperate with internal friends and talk too much outside. During this meal, the boss was quite busy coming in and out. There were many tables of leaders for friends outside who wanted to toast, and guests often came in to pay tribute to the boss. After the dinner, Mr. Fan accompanied the four of them to the car and went to a hotel. They agreed to meet again tomorrow and left. The four of them walked into the lobby. Hu Sheng said to Tao Tao, "Eating is a good occasion, but this place is basically like a guest house." Miss Yu looked gloomy. Tao Tao said that Mr. Fan said hello, that there were too many guests and the room could not be moved out at the moment, so the place would be changed the next day. Hu Sheng and Abo entered the room, poured 2 cups of tea, sat down and spoke only a few words. I heard a loud noise next door, and it was Miss Yu's voice. After a while, Tao Tao opened the door and came in and said, "Oh no, Miss Yu is going back to Shanghai. You two can give me some advice." The three of them ran into the next room and asked. Miss Yu was very angry and said, "I can't live in this kind of rubbish room. Now, I will move there immediately." Tao Tao said, "Miss Yu, you are already here. You must overcome it overnight, and we will talk about it tomorrow morning." Miss Yu sneered and said, "Humph, let me watch it. This Suzhou boss is a trash and a loser, and he wants to lie to me." Everyone was shocked. Miss Yu said, "Bullshit return on investment. Senior leadership development projects. Depends on people. I have seen enough. I understand." Tao Tao said, "Be gentle." Miss Yu said, "I can't touch this old bed. This old quilt. and this old pillow, and I will return to Shanghai immediately. Tao Tao went up to drag her, and Miss Yu said stubbornly, I thought about it. On the way, I will definitely not be happy when I come out this time. I recognize Tao Tao. I haven't been fooled enough. I'm 13 o'clock. The pottery is silent. Miss Yu said, Mr. Hu, Mr. Bao, let's go back together. Go back to Shanghai. And leave now. Tao Tao said, Miss Yu, you must save some face from me. You are too temperamental. Miss Yu said nothing. The scene was embarrassing. Bao took Tao Tao and went to the corridor to discuss it. Finally, Tao Tao said it was okay. So, Bao and Husheng returned to the room. The room next door was still noisy, but later, they heard laughter and footsteps in the corridor. Husheng said, What are two people doing? Bao said, I asked Miss Yu to live in a 4-star or 5-star hotel. Husheng said, Miss Yu is noisy and laughs, which is rare. Bao said that Tao Tao didn't understand the truth, and that such a meeting should not come at all. The two sat down and chatted. Bao said, Bai Ping must have some news. Husheng said that there were very few letters. Bao said, when I was sent abroad in 1989, I was promised 3 months. Now, 5 years and 3 months have passed. Husheng said that as soon as he left, my father-in-law and mother-in-law began to become indifferent. So I moved back to Wuding Road, here, 99. One day in the new year, my mother-in-law called me to the door, opened the drawer, and found an IOU for 22,200 yuan. The mother-in-law said that Bai Ping borrowed it before going abroad. I said nothing. The mother-in-law said that if there are any students in Shanghai, help Bai Ping pay a fee and asked Bai Ping to pay it back later. I kept quiet and took out 3,000 yuan, and the balance was delivered a week later. I later thought, people can't help but ask, how can we do it if it is 222,000 yuan? Bao smiled and said that he could never change his Cultural Revolution accent. Husheng said that at that time, he thought that Bai Ping would call and apologize, but he kept silent. When he called occasionally, he didn't mention it at all. Bao didn't make any sound. Husheng turned on the TV, and the two of them watched some news when someone knocked on the door. When Bao opened the door, he saw Tao Tao and Suzhou President Fan. Bao said, Where is Miss Yu? Tao Tao said, Mr. Bao, let's take a guess. Bao said, Back to Shanghai. Tao Tao said, Maybe, but impossible. Husheng said, Speak more cheerfully. Tao Tao said, I officially report that Miss Yu will stay at the Suzhou Hotel and the world will be at peace. Bao said, That's good. Tao Tao said, Miss Yu sat on the velvet sofa, which was white and pink, sweet and sticky, like Lin Daiyu. Husheng said. Sister Lin smiled. What was Bao Yu doing out here? Tao Tao said. What? Husheng said, just in case he frowned and got angry again. Tao Tao sighed and said, This woman is tantamount to dictatorship. I want democracy and freedom, and I am afraid of it. Mr. Fan from Suzhou smiled and said that it was all my fault for poor hospitality. Tao Tao called me and was really sorry. Bao said, You're welcome. Mr. Fan said, Miss Yu's order must be settled by me. Bao said that it was a trivial matter, so Mr. Fan didn't need to take it seriously. The four of them had tea and chatted for an hour. Husheng looked at his watch. It was already past 11 o'clock. Tao Tao said, It's getting late. You two are interested in going out. Bao said, I want to rest. Tao Tao said it was always okay to go out for a late-night snack. Husheng said, Forget it. Tao Tao said, Let's go. There is a small shop nearby, and the lady boss knows the style. Let's go there once and come back to rest. Mr. Fan said that the small shop is indeed good, and the proprietress is also interesting, so we can go and relax together. Tao Tao said, Let's go. Tao Tao took a Bao and Husheng, and the four of them walked downstairs to the lobby. The lights were dim and the front desk was empty. They approached the door. Two ring locks had been set. Tao Tao pushed the door open. Mr. Fan said, Waiter, waiter. After greeting for a long time, the side door of the front desk opened a crack, and a female voice came inside, talking about Su Bai, making some noise, until midnight. Tao Tao said, I want to go out. The waiter said it was extremely noisy. Cao Dao said, "Open the door. I want to go out." The woman said that there were regulations here that prohibited entry and exit, except in the middle of the night unless there was a fire. Cao Dao said, "Bart, please lock the door of the hotel. Open the door quickly and stop talking nonsense." The woman said, "It would be nice if you open your mouth and feel refreshed." Cao Dao said, "What to do?" The woman said, "I know. This is an internal guest house." Mr. Fan said, "Don't talk nonsense. We have an emergency and we need to open the door quickly." Bao said, "Forget it." Shang said, "No, Mr. Fan needs to go back and open the door." Cao Dao slapped the table, shook the door, and made a fuss, saying, "Open the door, open the door, open the door, open the door. I want to go out. I want to go out, go out." There was no sound from the crack in the door. Mr. Fan was furious and said in northern dialect, "What kind of service attitude do you have? Open the door quickly. Mom will slap the door. If you don't open the door, I will kick the door down." Bo and Hu Sheng took advantage of the situation to make a fuss. After arguing for a long time, a piece of Suzhou storytelling slowly came out from the crack of the door. With a long tone of Huliyun's Yingtai crying, Solan said, "If you want to open the door, you can pout, and when you go out, you can come back again." "Okay," Cao Dao said. "Deadlock. All conditions are acceptable. Just open it quickly." After a moment of silence, a bunch of keys rang, and a woman with a disheveled head slipped out of her shoes and opened the door. The four of them filed out and walked outside. The flowers were deep, and the moon was dark, and the air was fresh. Cao Dao said. His stomach was already empty. Mr. Fan said that this kind of guest house is like a prison. Cao Dao said, "How far is the shop?" Mr. Fan said it was only 3 intersections away. In the dead of night, the four of them walked silently and walked through more than 4 intersections. Mr. Fan looked around and found a storefront, but there was no light. The glass door was closed, and there was a notice posted on it that the bar was under renovation. Mr. Fan said, "Oh no," Cao Dao said. "Where is the boss's wife?" Mr. Fan was annoyed and said that he had not come for half a month, and his appearance had changed. Po looked at his watch. It was almost 1 o'clock. Mr. Fan said, "Either everyone can go take a bath, eat and sing." Cao Dao said, "Yes, yes." Bao said, "No more trouble, go back." Shang said, "I also want to go back." If Cao Dao really wants to take a bath, he should go with Mr. Fan. Mr. Fan said, "Either go together or not." Cao Dao said that he had come out and would not go back. Bao said, "It's getting late, so let's go back to the room and rest." The four of them walked towards the guest house. Bao discovered that Mr. Fan was not familiar with the local area, so he wandered for a while and took several wrong roads. Cao Dao was extremely disappointed. The four of them finally made it back to the guest house, and all the lights in the lobby were turned off. Cao Dao pushed the door open, and there were 3 locks inside. Cao Dao knocked on the door and said, "Open the door quickly, a guest has arrived." There was no sound inside. Cao Dao shook the door and said, "Open the door, I want to come in." There was no sound inside. Cao Dao said, "Dead man, open the door, open the door, open the door." There was no more sound inside the door. There was no light in the whole house. It was a dead house. Mr. Fan took off his coat, climbed up the iron window next to the door, and planned to climb in from the 2nd floor. Unexpectedly, there was a hissing sound, and people could not get up at all. The iron spikes on the railings pierced the trousers, tearing a big hole from the trousers' legs to the waist, leaving a mess. It's almost 2 o'clock in the middle of the night. Bao said that after spending his whole life going in and out of rooms, this trip was the hardest. Shang said that in the eyes of the waiter, for nocturnal wanderers were like for noisy dogs. A nightmare. Cao Dao said, "Let me take a break. I'll keep shouting and knocking until I get this dead woman to open the door." Bao said that it was impossible to open the door, so he should walk forward and squat at the door, like a stone lion. So the four of them walked forward in embarrassment, exhausted both physically and mentally. The street lights were dim and the night was as cold as water. Mr. Fan held up his torn trousers and said, "Wandering around like this is not an option. Why don't you find a place to live?" Bao said that Mr. Fan should go back first. Mr. Fan said, I'm embarrassed about this and I can't do it. Cao Dao said that after hanging out in the bathroom for a few hours, it would be dawn. Bao said, don't bother Mr. Fan now. Even if I go back to the room, I'm already full of energy and will still keep my eyes open until dawn. Sheng said, yes, Mr. Fan should go back first. Mr. Fan shook his head and picked up the pieces of his pants. Sheng understood what Bao meant. It seemed that Mr. Fan had limited abilities, so he made this embarrassing scene and followed him around. It was like forcing Mr. Fan to pay the bill, which was unnecessary. Sheng said, Mr. Fan will leave first. As for Cao Cao, he will go to the Suzhou Hotel to find Miss Yu, Mr. Bao, and I will find another way. Cao Cao said, this is too heartless. I would rather die on the street than find Miss Yu. Sheng said that Miss Yu can need people. Cao Cao said dejectedly that this time she came to Suzhou all because of this woman. Miss Yu was eager to invest. Alas, the way I look at women recently is so dizzy that it is getting worse and worse. Where did Lin Daiyu come from in this world? There are only standards. A tigress, at heart, a woman who just wants to make money. She called me so many times to attend this meeting. She actually came, picked 3 out of 4, and turned over her face faster than a card. This kind of woman, I can't see through. Sheng said, what's the use of telling me? Cao Dao said, heaven and earth. I'm already swollen and I completely buy it. Sheng said, forget it. After a few hours, the two of them smiled and became attached again. Cao Cao argued, and the 3 of them talked nonsense together. Mr. Fan walked alone, as if he had been possessed by a poison, turning round and around, ignorant and silent. At 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 people came to a pond. There was a winding stone plank in the water, leading to an old gray and black gatehouse. Beside the plank road, there are 2 rows of wide and long stone bars on all sides. The 4 of them sat down on the stone railing and felt comfortable. Although the sky is dark, there is a pool of white water in front of me, which is slightly bright. Bao said that it seemed like he had been here before. Sheng said, the scenery is pretty good. What kind of place is this? Several people walked to the front of the gatehouse. There was a plaque with black characters on the white ground, and the words Kingling Pavilion. Cao Dao said, I was really hungry. It turned out that I had arrived at Sabang Noodle House. There was also one on Weihai Road in Shanghai. Bao said, this is a Shanghai trick. You can't find it anywhere in Suzhou. Mr. Fan said that Tongzi, built in the northern Song dynasty, is the oldest garden in Suzhou. Bao didn't say anything. Facing the 2 black doors, the water shimmered under his feet, and he thought of Marufei, a famous Tansi master, Kangling fishing disciple. Mr. Fan said, Confucius said it, and the boy listened to it. Qingxi Juwing, Mousy is enough. Take it from yourself. Sheng said, I can't believe it. It was the first time I came here during the Cultural Revolution period, and I have been here since then. At night, I couldn't recognize it at all. Mr. Fan put down his torn trousers and said that he recently came with a client and learned that this place was burned down and demolished by the Taiping army in the 10th year of Xianfeng and restored in the Tongxi year. The 4 of them sat silently on the stone railing, with the clouds calming and the wind calming down, and the moonlight appearing in the dawn sky, talking and talking, full of wonderful thoughts. The mountains and trees in the garden are stacked on top of each other, still dark and dark, with blurred outlines and no details visible. However, the long row of whitewashed walls gradually changes their grayscale and slowly turns white with the change of skylight. At the twilight moment, there are faint sounds all around, the subtle sounds in the throats of birds, which seem to be there but not at all, like singing but not singing. Bao said that the Taiping army did not want scholars, the books were burned out, and the Kingling Pavilion was burned down. The 8 Power Allied forces attacked Beijing. Li Shucheng attacked Changzhou and moved to Suzhou. A guard in the Qing dynasty committed suicide by throwing himself into the river. As a result, he was caught in the water and tracked to Shucheng. Before, an old book said that Shucheng had 8 sword-wielding guards, wearing yellow cloaks, yellow satin mandarins, 4-sided leather, and a beard. Xu Cheng sighed and said that his hair was so long that the people called me Long Mao. In the future, if something goes wrong, it will be impossible for me to escape. The guards of the Qing dynasty were dripping with water and kept their heads down. Xu Cheng said, "If I have a smooth journey, I have a share in the country. I am useful. I am famous in the world, and I am defeated. I will suffer." Speaking of this, I shed to tears. Mr. Fan said that Chang Mao could not compete with Xianfeng. Cao Dao said that there are many risks in stock trading and you should be cautious when entering the market. The leader of the Shanghai rebel team at that time could have more women if the revolution was successful and the relationship was happy. Hu Sheng took one look at Tao Tao and said, "She is a woman again. She has suffered enough for women, but it is not enough." Tao Tao laughed at himself and said, "I know in my heart. As the old saying goes, I have been stealing until now, but I am never satisfied. God is the fairest. I want to be free and enjoy the sweetness, but also the bitterness. So it doesn't matter." The four of them talked, and after being in a daze for a while, they felt at ease. The moon is fading. The sky is getting brighter and brighter, and the bird song is chirping, getting louder and louder, and finally louder. Set out in the middle of the night, helpless and helpless for absurd children, wandering in the middle of the night. Now I sit in silence in the ancient garden and old trees in the south, looking at the hazy houses in Suzhou and a few Roman columns of the Suzhou Art Museum. Gradually it becomes clear, and the warm breeze is like the wine is rippled like silk. And on top of the first-class clear water, some people come to fish and some come to exercise. 3 or 2 hawkers brought in vegetable baskets, soaked them in the water, and picked them up dripping wet. Everyone looked around, and suddenly, the clouds spread out before their eyes. A Bao said that it was rare in this life to see Kangling Pavilion light up bit by bit. 2. Li Li ran the Jizinuan restaurant and changed several locations. When the new restaurant took shape, one Friday, he invited a Bao, Hu Sheng, Ms. Wang and Mr. Honking, Mr. King and his wife to have dinner. Everyone entered the foreskin room and sat down. Li Li came in. She had beautiful eyes, newly made long hair, and a brand-name pencil skirt. She glanced at the table and said, "To women and for men, there is something wrong with the matching." Miss Wang said, "I thought Mr. Bao, a Husheng student, would bring his girlfriend in." Li Li said, "It's okay. I'll invite 2 beautiful girls to come over." Miss Wang said that Li Li looked more and more coquettish. Li Li smiled and walked out. After a cup of tea, he accompanied 2 female guests to introduce them. Miss Wu, the company's accountant, and Miss Zhang, a foreign-invested white-collar worker. Everyone sat down. Li Li went out to socialize, and the waiter served the food. Hong King said, "Now that the 2 female guests are here, who will take care of the job?" Miss Wang said, "What about the foreskin? Let the foreskin support the little girl." Hong King is silent. Miss Wang said, "When I saw Miss Wu, she had a good drinker. Miss Zhang only drank chrysanthemum tea. Which one did Mr. Bao prepare to take care of?" Miss Wu suddenly said slowly, "I don't like men to take care of me. I only like to take care of men." Miss Wu clinked glasses with a bow and took a sip. Miss Zhang and Hu Sheng had beers. Kang Tai was chubby and said with a smile, "You are right, woman. Why should a man take care of me? I just like to take care of men and let men be old ladies." Miss Wang said nothing. Kang Tai said, "I help my husband squeeze his feet and stroke his back every day, which makes me happy." Mr. King smiled. Miss Wang didn't say anything. And then she stepped on Hong King, and Hong King screamed. Hu Sheng said, "I just went upstairs and saw several nuns looking for Li Li." Miss Wu said that there were 2 vegetarian tables set up outside. Li Li believed in Buddha and Bodhisattva, was a vegetarian, and had always had friends in this field. Po recognized many restaurant owners, and Li Li was the one who had the best impression. It has been open for many years, and the 2 of them are familiar with each other. Bao was often extremely busy, and calls from friends in the hotel came in one after another. "Mr. Bao, the store has brought in more than 100 kilograms of grouper. Do you want to order a portion? Steamed or black bean sauce? Bring new friends? It's still the same old rules. Set up 2 tables. I strongly invite Bao to the meeting. Prepare a table for strangers. Accompany a bow, or let a bow accompany a stranger. Lily is basically silent. It was often the moment when a bow felt lonely. The company was empty of people and the tea had become weak. When a bow missed Lily, he received a call from Lily saying, "Mr. Bao is busy and if he is in the mood, come and see me now." A Bao agreed and walked into the Jishan garden. He was led to a small room, a small round table, and 2 pairs of chopsticks, plates, and cups. A Bao sat down, and Lily came in and served some side dishes. The door was closed tightly, and his eyes were calm. He talked casually about his recent past, which seemed a bit strange, like an old friend he hadn't seen for many years. There was no need to worry about the trivial details of daily life and business disputes. Words and sentences. On Lily's birthday, a Bao asked someone to send a small flower basket, meat for drinks at night. A Bao said, "Here is the flower basket." Lily said, "I'm sorry, I don't like flower baskets." A Bao said, "Something is wrong?" Lily said, "I don't like this kind of flower. The store doesn't use it, only carnations." A Bao said that roses are expensive and have a short lifespan, while carnations can last for more than a week. Lily said, "I won't talk anymore." Mr. King smiled. That night, Lily drank too much, and later said sadly, that if I talked about my past experiences, I could really write a book. A Bao said, "It's okay to talk." Lily said that he often wakes up in the middle of the night and wants to talk carefully to a good friend. A Bao said that good friends are right in front of you. In addition, you can also talk to the tape recorder. Lily said, "I am crazy." A Bao said that foreigners like to talk to themselves. Talk to the tape recorder about what they think of, past entanglements, various people in the past, happy and unhappy moments. They can talk about and record them casually. Lily said that a Bao drank ecstasy soup. A Bao said that you can take a plane or a ship and speak at any time. This is called oral history. When compiled, it is the material, a book. Lily said, "Of course I have a plot and a story, but it is not convenient to tell it because it is a private secret." A Bao didn't make any sound. Lily seemed drunk but not drunk and said, "I'm not in a good mood. If I talk about it, I will cry." At this moment, there have been 3 drinks on the table. Miss Wu wore an off-shoulder dress. The air conditioner was cold, and she put on A Bao's chair jacket. They had a drink with A Bao. Seeing that A Bao was not in a good mood, she slowed down and picked up food for A Bao. Hong King said, "See it. Everyone should see it." Mr. King said, "What did you see?" Hong King said that Miss Wu takes good care of men. Miss Wang said nothing. Hong King said that it was really considerate for the 2 of them to sit side by side. Miss Wu shrank into A Bao's clothes and whispered, "What is Mr. Hong talking about?" This stage, Lily came in with people to toast twice. First, it was a Hong Kong man, the director of a certain Hong Kong investment and Shanghai office. The last time I came, I had already eaten so much that my face was full of peach blossoms. The 2 Taiwanese men on the left and right had obviously drank too much. These 2 Taiwanese men, aged in their early 40s, considered young talents with good demeanor, took a sip with everyone and accompanied Lily out. Lily staggered a little. Her high-heeled leather shoes were askew, and she looked charming. A Bao understands that there is basically no story between Lily and the 2 Taiwanese men. There is something subtle about the Hong Kong man in front. At that time, Lily and this person came in and were not close to each other. But as they approached the table, from A Bao's perspective, the 2 people were actually close. Even close. Everyone stood up and held cups to congratulate the business on its prosperity. There is no need to peek at Po's position. It is reflected by the glass door of the foreskin room. He can clearly see the Hong Kong man's fleshy hand. At this moment, he reaches out to Lily's waist and puts it tightly. He slides it 3 inches below the waist and tightens it again. www.dongdui.com. It all depends on the time and degree. Everyone stood up and focused on the amount of wine in the glass in front of them. Under the chandelier, in front of them were faces, expressions, and wine glasses. The chair should be moved. People should stand upright. Their eyes should be facing forward. The mouth of the cup should be symmetrical, and it should collide with certain parts of other cups. or even embed them. Control the strength and sound, and be careful about the weight. How much alcohol you drink depends on the amount. Because this is Shanghai, you can pretend to be a little more or less, take a small sip, or swallow the whole cup in one gulp. In Shanghai, you can do whatever you want in the chaos. No one would have thought that behind Lily's waist, between the curves and swings of high-grade fabric cutting, near the double lines of the cello, above the charming arc, a strange hand slid over silently, like a cobra gliding across the grass. Swim flexibly, stay awake, and enjoy the quiet time. Whether the two people have had a tacit understanding for several years, or whether they are sending out inquiries and hints tonight, no one will understand. This kind of small gesture is more elegant than the average gentleman. The time is extended, the details of the fingers, the water in the spring river is warm, no outsider can know. Shanghai dialect, the first trial, the so-called Tai Cow, Kita, Batik, Jiuda, chatting, or taking pulse. When a thief gets on the tram, an old Chinese medicine doctor sits in the hall and takes a pulse first. There is a square protruding from the passenger's back pocket. It is a wallet, a notebook, or a facial tissue. Industry rules are inconvenient. Use your forearm and rely on the back of your hand. If you accidentally touch it, lean on it and hold it close for a few seconds. Practice more in the room at ordinary times, and the skin on the back of your hands will be sensitive. You can feel whether the other person is banknotes, business cards, or a whole stack of straw paper. Once the other party notices it, because the palm is facing outward, there will be no suspicion. This kind of testing is called taking the pulse in Shanghai's three-hands industry. Li raised his glass, and the Hong Kong man crossed the warning line, slid up and down, and had a ride. Li couldn't see any reaction on his face, and he was very excited in his heart. He was still surprised, annoyed, and even disgusted. It was inconvenient to have such a big crowd, so he gave way. For others, Li didn't reveal any traces and was silent at all. But when everyone had a drink, Li squeezed the red wine glass tightly and prepared to turn around and go out. He was wearing high heels. Due to the restrictions of the chair legs, table circumference, and skirt, he turned around carefully and took advantage of the situation, and put a hand on the Hong Kong man's shoulder. This very natural movement showed that he had good intentions. Po lowered his head and looked at his watch. It was getting late. Nearby, Miss Zhang got along well with Mr. Kang, his wife, and Hu Sheng. Miss Kai Kuzhang had a few beers and then only chrysanthemum tea, but no one noticed. The dinner at Xijin Yuan was supposed to last until 9 o'clock. A beau went to wash his hands and asked, and saw that the few plain tables outside, where some lay friends and lay people had been dispersed. At other tables, guests also stood up. As soon as a beau returned to his room to talk, everyone dispersed. Li delivered it to the door of the store. Although he had a little more wine, his mind was clear. He thanked him again and said that he had been in Shanghai for many years since he opened the store. He had an old friend in Changshu who collected nearly 100 calendar cards. He also had an old house with furniture from the 1930s. There are quite a few of them. When the hairy crabs come on the market, I'm going to meet you all and take a group trip. Everyone agrees. So Miss Wang, Hong King, Mr. King and his wife left first. There are 4 people left. A Bao, Hu Sheng, Miss Wu and Miss Zhang. Miss Zhang suggested coffee. Miss Wu suddenly said that she wanted to walk alone with a beau for a while. So the 4 of them split into 2 groups. Hu Sheng and Miss Zhang asked for a car to leave. Miss Wu and a Bao walked west along Beijing Road, but they only walked half a stop. Miss Wu waved to the car and the 2 of them sat in the back seat. Miss Wu said, Yan'an Hotel, Yan'an Middle Road. The driver said, JJ Dance Hall. Miss Wu said, yes. A Bao couldn't react. The car was driving fast, and Miss Wu was close to a Bao. No. 5. The smell of perfume. Eyes closed tightly, head lowered, body shaking slightly. A Bao said that if you don't feel comfortable, you should go back. Miss Wu said in a sweet voice, Mr. Bao, don't get me wrong. A Bao didn't make any sound. Miss Wu said, to be honest, Mr. Bao is like my father. Bao didn't make any sound. Miss Wu said softly, "Now, I can call Mr. Bao Daddy. It's okay to call me Daddy." Bao was stunned and said, "If it were ancient times, I could be the grandfather." Miss Wu said sadly, "I have lacked a father since I was a child." Bao didn't make any sound. Miss Wu said, "Recently, I have been in a mess. I had a falling out with my husband, and I don't want to go back." Bao said, "Some women just call their husbands dad, so why would they go out to look for their dads again?" Miss Wu said that her husband was 3 years younger than me and could not scream. Bao didn't make any sound. Miss Wu said, "Don't be nervous. I just screamed. I am relatively happy now." Bao said that this is the happiest stage for a woman. Miss Wu wisely explained that this is often the most unhappy stage. Bao said he couldn't understand. Miss Wu said, "Why do we need to understand?" Bao said it was better to go back. Miss Wu said, "What is Bao's zodiac sign?" Bao said, "February on the 6th. Miss Wu said with a smile that it is a bottle. "It is better for friends than for family members. I am a Pisces." Bao said that it is said to be happy for someone, and will be unforgettable for a lifetime. Miss Wu said, "I heard that Mr. Bao only I liked a little sister when I was a boy." Bao said nothing. Miss Wu said, "What is the name of this little sister and what is her zodiac sign?" Bao smiled and said, "She was probably a Pisces, because this sister, together with the old nanny, turned out to be a fish." Miss Wu said, "It's impossible." Bao said, "It's true." Miss Wu said, "Mr. Bao saw my nonsense, so he drove the trolley bus." Bao didn't make any sound. Miss Wu said, "Mr. Bao has arrived. Now, I am still single, and I must have someone in my heart." Bao is silent. Miss Wu said, "Where is Li Li, with the Taurus sign? He is beautiful and has good fortune." Bao smiled and felt a headache at this moment. Miss Wu said, "Li Li's story. I know," Bao said. "I know." Miss Wu said nothing. Bao said, "Tell me about it." Miss Wu smiled and suddenly said cautiously, "I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, it's hard to explain in one sentence." The two talked back and forth, and JJ had arrived. There were green women and red men inside and outside the door. As soon as they stepped inside, the heavy metal rhythm made the ground tremble. They couldn't distinguish between east, west and north. It was dark and bright. The place was big and crowded. Singing and dancing. The atmosphere is lively. Po bought the drinks, squeezed out of the crowd, and returned to where he was. Miss Wu had already entered the dance group and jumped into the dark wave. The dance hall is crowded and hot. Bao thought that when Miss Wu entered this black hole, she was immediately submerged and swallowed up. But Miss Wu's off-shoulder skirt is made of reflective material. The darker the surroundings, the more people crowd in. And the dimmer the lights become, the more Miss Wu becomes visible. The outline of her body flashes with silvery white fluorescence, like a beacon on the Black Sea, rising and falling, and extremely dazzling. The black waves rushed toward the cursor, pressed over, and rushed over. The cursor floated up and down, jumped, and danced. Bao sat in a daze on a high stool, his heart beating with the rhythm. A hanging horse often came over. The sound was deafening, and he heard clear and gentle greetings. "Brother, please give me a white face." "Brother, he is alone." There was a woman who reached out to get a drink, but Bao blocked her. The disco music is endless and my ears feel sore and swollen. Then Miss Wu came back, dripping with sweat, smiled, and suddenly hugged Bao tightly. For a long time, Miss Wu hugged Bao tightly and fell into Bao's arms. Miss Wu raised her face. Her eyebrows were curved and her eyes were beautiful. She shed 2 lines of tears and said, "I am happy now." Bao didn't make any sound. Miss Wu said, "Dad, don't get me wrong. I just feel unhappy." Bao didn't make any sound. Miss Wu said, "I really don't mean anything else. I just want a hug now. Thank you. Dad, Dad."
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.